Thank you very much. We are moving on to our next topic. When thinking about blockchain and AI, a lot of us are wondering how these new technologies will impact the future of work. And the Next Generation Internet is an initiative of the European Commission that addresses the needs of European citizens for new internet protocols and technologies. New mechanisms are needed that would provide and support trustworthy content handling and information exchange, pluralism and democracy, respect for human rights, sustainability and care for the environment, security and privacy and other needs of the European citizens, which existed even before the emergence of computer science and the internet. Blockchains with their consensus mechanisms can greatly help shape this future with the various decentralized oracles and consensus mechanisms. There are numerous ongoing projects and activities that can help shape blockchains for the next generation internet. With this, I would like to announce the 5th workshop of the European Blockchain Week on the topic of blockchain and AI for the future of work. And I would like to welcome our moderator, Mr. Wilm Stallmans, co-chair of the INADBA Education Working Group.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome everyone to this 5th workshop where we will tackle some aspects of blockchain, AI, and the future of work. So my name is Wim Stallmans. I am the co-chair of the INADBA Education Working Group. And let me take the opportunity to put very quickly forward our recent paper that we published in which we propose a blockchain educational approach and invite all the stakeholders to join the debate and help continue building a common approach to blockchain education. So that's it for me. More importantly, our panel for today. Let me quickly introduce you, and then I'll give each of the panelists 1 to 2 minutes to introduce themselves. So Dan Lejerskar, Dr. Alan Lipusch, Professor Joyce O'Connor, Philip Rickson, Ulrich Scharf. Thank you all for being here. I propose that Dan, could you take 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourself and how your work is related to blockchain, AI, and the future of work.
Absolutely. So good afternoon, everybody. Hi from Bayern, München, here in Germany. I am originally from Sweden, as the name implies, but I spent the last 23 years in the United States working in Silicon Valley. And I'm also running a company that is a leader in virtual augmented reality connected with AI for knowledge transfer and both for workers, for the future skills, so to speak, as well as academia. So quick introduction by myself. This is what we do. We are very passionate about to implement what we call the knowledge metaverse. And we see for that to happen, it has to be a cross point between, on one side, technologies like augmented virtual reality, artificial intelligence, but the assets created in this have to be protected by blockchain technology using non-fungible tokens. Also, the avatars that are in these environments have to have an ID. That ID needs to be protected because there will be a lot of sensitive data that will be made available. So we are working for that. And I happen to be on a tour in Europe for about a month, meeting ministers in various countries to facilitate that process and also to encourage legislation and programs to make sure that Europe remains strong in this area where today, US has a strong presence as well as other countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Alan, 1 to 2 minutes, quick introduction of yourself. Thank you.
But I'm Alan Lipusch. I come from company Probit. I'm a project manager there. I hope and thank you all again for having me, and I'm very glad to have this opportunity to present to you some of my thoughts about the future of work and how it relates to the product that we are developing at Probit. Like I said, I've been at Probit for 9 months, and during this time we were developing the product called Work and Skill. It's connected to the, for example, to the job market, and basically the differentiating factor of this product is that in addition to monetary compensation, workers can then get also competencies minted as NFTs, and that can they then present to interested third parties, and thus making some steps towards more transparent and trustworthy job market. And we will be going live at the end of the year, and basically this is what I will be presenting in about half an hour. Okay.
Thank you, Alan. Joyce, would you like to take 1 to 2 minutes to introduce yourself, please?
Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here with the other panelists. It's a very interesting topic. My background is in education and research. I established the National College of Ireland. I've been involved in social research and really in policy research, and involved as chair and member of a number of government bodies and agencies. In particular, say, the Digital Hub Development Agency. I've been involved with business as a board member of company PLCs, Cement, Roadstone, and also the Bank of Ireland and the Building Society, and with the voluntary and not-for-profit sector. So you see, I have a wide range of interest and involvement in industry, academia, civil society, and with government. But I became really converted to technology probably about a decade ago when I became involved with the Institute of International and European Affairs, which is a think tank in Dublin, where I chair the digital group there. And in about 2018, as a co-founder of BlockW, which was about creating awareness about blockchain, fostering inclusivity, and looking at pathways to education and skills to upskill people in the workforce. And I'm speaking here as chair of Blockchain Ireland's working group on education, skills and innovation. Look forward to all the presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joyce. I see, and I'm very happy to see Philip Rickson. Philip, would you like to take 1 to 2 minutes to introduce yourself, please?
So, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, Wim. Briefly, I'm Philip Rickson. I'm a Research and Innovation Director at DigiCity, which is a company with 2 locations, one in Tallinn, Estonia, and one in London, United Kingdom. I came to artificial intelligence a few years ago, let's say 36. Just 36 years ago, I was dealing with expert systems, mainly in 2 domains, configuration of very complex things and technical diagnostic. More recently, 6 years ago, I came in contact with blockchain, a thing that I still do not completely understand, but I understood relatively quickly what it could be used for. Recently, with my colleagues, we started to develop what could be the core of a copyright infrastructure, and to build that, we need both blockchain and artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. And then we have Ulrich Scharf. Ulrich, would you like to take 1 to 2 minutes to introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. So I'm Ulrich Scharf, Managing Director and co-founder at SkillUp. And SkillUp is an impact-oriented technology build company from Amsterdam. And we developed a tool that empowers job seekers on the labor market by identifying all of their skills through AI, and then matching that skill set to all opportunities on the labor market and creating essentially a pathway to employment for every person. And we provide this technology to employment and career services all around the world. So it helps them to better serve job seekers. Generally speaking, our core underlying technology is an interesting use of AI that I will further illustrate in my presentation. but it also nicely relates to the blockchain topic, as we help to identify skills, but we don't verify credentials. So we see ourselves very much as kind of an organization that creates data and creates information, and that plays very nicely with all credentialing efforts around the blockchain space.
Thank you, Ulrich. Already from the introductions, we can see that there are so many aspects around the topic, blockchain, AI, and the future of work. So we have very little time. What we will be trying to do in the remaining 45 minutes is to tackle some of these aspects. What is quite interesting in the composition of the workshop's panel is that they all work specifically on one of these elements, and somehow they are meant to somewhere in the future to converge. So it's quite interesting to have each of your views on blockchain, AI, and the future of work. But before we do so, we'll have Philip Rickson, who will help us to, first of all, take a step back, and he will help us to understand the complex concept that work is. So, Philip, the floor is yours.
So, this morning, I refer to the Garden of Eden to discuss blockchain and AI for a sustainable quality education. There, in the Garden of Eden, the protagonists acquire and use knowledge, and they rest. They are also very active. Mankind left the garden and invented an incredible number of tools and devices to leverage their physical strengths, the strengths required for the active life. More recently, mankind started to develop other tools and devices to enhance their intellectual capabilities, the intellectual capabilities required for the active life. Blockchain is one of them. A technique to store information in a secure, scalable, and decentralized way. A technique which is transforming collaboration, transforming working together. Artificial intelligence is a collection of systems helping mankind see, learn, bridge languages, configure things, analyze situations, recommend, and even decide. If blockchain is a tool, AI is more a cluster of devices for work. What is work? In her book on the human condition, Hannah Arendt writes about the active life, and she distinguished between labor, les laboureurs, the plow people who till and tend the garden to assure their own survival, you and the environment. Work, which creates and makes things, you and the products, the domain of innovation, markets, growth, employment, and most policies. And action, when the unique and equal self interacts with other unique and equal selves, you and the society. Working at the edge. 2001, the world was becoming increasingly interconnected. 2011, people were interacting and sharing ideas quickly, accessing an abundance of content, joining virtual and global communities, and trying out new business models. That was the context of sustainable development in 2011. 2021, societal challenges move to the edge. A state expanding exponentially, scratching problems with higher complexity, moving into unfamiliar geographical and social scenes, and addressing issues with a higher purpose. This is the context of sustainable development in 2021. The Edge questions: Big Brother, fake news, harmful content, censorship, addictions, monopoly, tyranny, pandemic, climate change. The Edge requires quality, quantity, services, and scalability. We understand questions and requirements. How can we work out the answers? In fact, the Edge occurs during a liminal period when social hierarchies are reversed or temporarily dissolved. Continuity of tradition becomes uncertain, and future outcomes, once taken for granted, are thrown into doubt. Sustainable development is at the edge, an unknown territory, a state where no single organization has all the answers. Trying to work on sustainable development in its previous context is doomed to failure. Trying to solve challenges in a globalized economy with methods inherited from national industrial production will not succeed. Wicked problems. In design, planning, and policy, a wicked problem is a problem that is impossible to solve because of incomplete, contradictory, and changing requirements that are difficult to recognize. Wicked problems refer to ideas or problems that cannot be fixed, where there is no single solution. We call them wicked because they resist to resolution. The social complexity of wicked problem means that they have no determinable end point. Due to complex interdependencies, the effort to solve one aspect of a wicked problem may reveal or create another problem. The expression wicked problem was originally used and formally described by Horst Rittel and Melvin Weber in a 1973 paper, contrasting wicked problem with relatively tame, soluble problems in mathematics, chess, or puzzle. Approaching wicked problems such as climate change, pandemics, or even copyright in the digital era will remain the prerogative of human intelligence for a while. Blockchain and artificial intelligence will assist. More importantly, Rittel and Weber postulated that people approaching wicked problems must make abstraction of their own ideals. Does that mean that selling wind farms is not the way to approach pollution? Producing vaccines is not the way to approach pandemics. Or seeking re-election is not the way to approach immigration. No, that's not what it means. It means that these products or interests are not sufficient and could have unforeseeable consequences. What happens if instead of separating Arendt's labor, work, and action, we organize them and create a three-dimensional space? We create a space for a meaningful, active life. An example. In her paper on political agents as relational selves, Nicole Dewant argues eloquently that the boosting growth objective, the remit of the monodirectional work, the boosting growth objective lose traction as it becomes meaningless. In contrast, the lifting poverty objective gains traction as its meaningfulness flows from the biological nature of all of us, the direction of labor. All of us as relational selves, the direction of action. Lifting poverty is the first of the Sustainable Development Goals. It is a wicked problem at the edge. Aging is another problem, another example of wicked problem at the edge. Approaching these issues meaningfully is worth trying. This space is the meaningful future of work, better said, the meaningful future of active life. I tested it successfully. 3 years ago, I validated this 3D model at the hand of a copyright policy with the author of the model and a fantastic team at the EU Joint Research Centre. Instead of considering the new neighboring right of the press publishers as a mono-directional means for their mere survival, the human-product relationship, we ended up formulating the sustainability of quality journalism as a meaningful 3D alternative, combining the three perspectives of work, labor, and action: product, environment, and society. Artificial intelligence and blockchain can and will help mankind conduct this meaningful active life.
Thank you, Philip.
Wim, up to you.
Thank you very much. It's indeed very important to essential to master the fundamentals in order to be able intelligently to implement specific solutions afterwards. Thank you, Philip. I propose that we move on to Ulrich's presentation. So here we have a first manifestation of how AI is linked not only to the future of work, but also very specifically beginning today. So Ulrich, I'm handing over to you.
Yeah, let me jump right into it. So as mentioned in our introduction, we're a technology startup that helps people to capture their skills and then from there on build a career for themselves, both in terms of acquiring education as well as directly landing into jobs. And I will present to you in the next minutes in a very dense and essential way of how we use AI to do that. And at the end of the couple of slides, I will link this a little bit more to the wider blockchain theme and how all of these things are connected. But before I get into the technology and all the part I get really excited about, is that I would like to mention why does this matter so much? And when we talk about, empowering people in labor markets, I can only stress that this is an absolutely crucial moment for career support. In fact, the European Union estimates that 1 out of 4 adults needs some form of career support each year. And this was pre-COVID. And the reason for this is that we have a couple of really strong drivers for this. And we saw, for example, a big wave of migration over the last couple of years that created a situation where a lot of adults and individuals need to find a new pathway forward. We also see a big trend from older industries to more digital and more automized industries that essentially leave a lot of our workers stranded and having to try to find a new way forward. We have the ambition to move forward into a green economy, but that again will mean that we will destroy a lot of jobs on purpose, but also create a lot of new jobs that are just different. On top of this, these megatrends we also saw now, COVID accelerating everything. And what these things have in common is that this creates more and more the need for people to just change careers and change an existing labor market. And that's where really our approach comes in, because within this environment, if you purely think in degrees and job titles, the way we did it over the last 50 years, you disadvantage so many because it becomes very hard for somebody to transition from one job environment into a different industry or a completely different career. It becomes also increasingly difficult for people to use their old education and transfer that over into a new, perhaps different field. And also we see that for those of us that do not have the perfect CV or didn't go to a fantastic university, that people really struggle to showcase their abilities to employers. And as a result, we're just leaving more and more people behind. And that's where our general round of skills comes in. So when we talk about skill profiling and how is this related and what's, our general approach here is that, first of all, we profile and identify the skills and competencies of any person. It doesn't matter if you have a cleaning job or if you're the mayor of the city, every person has skills, they're just different and we can capture them. And on top of that, we can answer the question of like, okay, within your skills, where are your skills relevant? Of all of the jobs, of all of the vacancies that are on the labor market, where is your abilities and skills, where are they useful, and where do you have a next good chance for the next step? So the way we do this, and that's the part where the technology and AI component comes in, is that we trained a model of 13,500 skills. It's based on a European framework to exactly capture of how skills and tasks and abilities on the labor market are related to each other. So each dot you see here is a skill. This is basically a TensorFlow modulation of our AI assessment engine. And what you see here is that if two dots are a little bit closer together, it just means that those skills and competencies in the real world are pretty closely related. So if you in your job, for example, are checking dining room cleanliness as one of the activities you do there, there's a high chance you also know something about sparkling wines, or you can advise guests on an evening menu. And we purely understand the labor market as just the landscape of skills. And this allows us to kind of capture people on the level of skills, to capture jobs and vacancies on the level of skills, and to also understand education on the level of skills. And as a quick side note, for this technology, we also won the Google AI Impact Award for the best use of AI for social good. But let me show you how we then actually make this useful to a real person. So let's say you're an unemployed individual and you need to figure out a new way forward. And the employment service that you work with, either a public or a private employment agency, is luckily a client of us. And you will then get from them an invitation to download our application on your phone or any other device. And what you're going to go through first is that our app will guide you through a process where you file every job you had, every education you had, and any other experience as well. So do you have kids? Did you raise a family? Did you take care of elderly? Do you teach a sports team? Do you have any form of community experience? Like, we are interested in everything you did in your life where you learned something. And then we run for each experience this AI-driven assessment. And if you think of that kind of cloud that you saw a couple of seconds earlier, what it basically is that AI you saw there just interviews you skill by skill by skill. What did you exactly do in this job? And every single time you just indicate whether you use the skill always or never. And with every single answer you give, our AI learns a little bit more about, okay, this is what you did in this job. And as a result, it's relatively quickly through a series of, let's say, 50, 60 questions that come in a rapid kind of series to figure out, okay, this is what you did in your job. These are the things you didn't do in your job. And as a result, it can take the skill profile and understand how much time you spend on each skill. Also, we can do this in 27 different languages, which is very helpful, especially for migrants and refugees. Now, once you went through the skill profiling, we can say for every adult, okay, these are your skills. So for a person in their 20s, it's usually around 70 skills on average. Somebody in their 30s has more like 120, 130 skills on average. And we can just take that skill set and map that into, first of all, 3,000 different careers that we identified, but we can also now match it directly into every vacancy in your neighborhood. So on one glance, you can see how your skill set just relates to every job that's out there. And that's an immediately empowering thing that allows you to think of yourself in a total labor market, but don't be trapped in these classical silos and old ways of labor market thinking. You can also look at all vacancies and see online training and local education providers that offer a specific course that helps you to address your personal skill gap to a given vacancy. So that way we make education and training very kind of tangible directly in the context of a job that you're interested in. And I think there's a huge intersection here around micro-credentials and generally some of the revolutions we see in the education sector. And then last but not least, if you saw a job that you find really interesting, you can also automatically generate job application materials for those jobs. They look a little bit traditional because employers like CVs. You know, that's just how they think. We just optimize it for them. But each CV, an application set, is completely unique to the job and your background, because we tell essentially the story of everything you learned throughout the different stations of your life that is relevant for this job you're applying for. So with other words, we're presenting the strongest possible case you could make of how your life prepared you for this job. And thereby we massively increase the chances of any individual to get that job interview, even though they might not have, by classical means, a CV or background that would make them an obvious candidate for this job. So that's a core value proposition to the user. It helps people to be more independent, more successful in labor markets, and especially those that usually have a harder time around this. The last element I will add here, and that's the link to blockchain, is that everything I showed you so far has been around identifying skills and then using that skill set to provide really good labor market advice and help people to apply for jobs. The next dimension of this and the next step for this entire field is the whole credibility trust element here. So how can you create the trust and the confidence of employers that what this person is saying is true? And I think there is a really interesting intersection with blockchain that offers some of the technologies that probably will be the solution around this problem and allow for a kind of very democratic and decentralized way of just validating and creating credibility around the different experiences and skills you acquired in your life. So let me stop there. I'm very curious now about the coming presentations. And if there's anything you found interesting here and you want to learn more about our work, I recommend that you look us up on LinkedIn or on our website and then just follow us so you get the regular updates. Thank you, Wim.
Thank you very much, Ulrich, and a beautiful example of how technology creates efficiencies, win-win situations, and transforms potentially the labor market to become a better place for everyone. And indeed, you're right to look forward to the next presentation. We have Dr. Alan Lippusch, who is working on the next stage. Ulrich, you were talking about initiating on the blockchain skills or the registration of skills. Now, Alan, he is working on the next stage. So I propose that we go over directly to Alan's presentation. Alan, I'll just ask you to keep an eye on the time because we are quite restricted. Thank you. The floor is yours.
As Ulrich was saying, identifying skill sets is important, but quantifying them is the next step. But just before I continue with my presentation, I would like to thank Philip for making a nice conceptual distinction between labor and work, because it is important to realize that we are living in current ideological climate that, as COVID showed, economy is working and the humans or the individuals are doing the labor. So it is good to keep in mind something like this. But before I start, I would also like to say that when we are talking about the future of work, we must also keep in mind that one of the greatest economists in the 20th century, John Maynard Keynes, was predicting that by now we should all be working 15-hour work weeks due to automation, and this didn't happen, although we have these talks in these directions. And instead we are basically living in an inflation of jobs that a late David Graeber, an anthropologist, was calling bullshit jobs. So basically these are jobs that are meaningless, pointless, very, very tough to reconciliate with yourself, especially, and they exert some kind of psychological violence to the individual, especially if the individual is living in a work ethical environment in which his self-worth is derived from the labor that he or she is doing. So I'm just trying to paint some kind of grim picture of the reality and the challenges that we face. Of course, when developing work and skill, we were identifying certain challenges like Ulrich was already mentioning. So for example, we focused on the veracity of references, payment discipline, lack of any viable qualification or quantification, because as you may know, even though you don't currently work and have formal working relationships, you're still contributing something to the society, maybe in a form of activism or a form of volunteer work. And wouldn't it be nice if you had like some sort of continuous career scheme in which a digital map, if you like, in which you had like written, transparent and trustworthy work contributions in the form of, for example, competencies that are ESCO compliant and such. So we are working on this kind of one piece of the mosaic that could emancipate the workforce in the future. So, for example, just to somehow confirm all these challenges, we have certain stats that should not be ignored. For example, 79% of the workforce is in the youth is having trouble entering the job market, and this is certainly partly because they lack the articulating skills to identify their accomplishments, and I think something like Skill Lab in this sense might help them. And of course, they also lack the tools to credibly showcase their competencies that are already in their possession. And one of the other data points is that 35% of the global working age population is having some sort of precariousness in their work relations. So this is something that should also be addressed, and something like what we are doing is certainly aligned with this solution. So just one more data set is that we can see that increased job insecurity is on the rise, and the whole precarity of the workforce is something that needs to be addressed. And that's why we asked all these questions of how do you find, for example, credible future employees? How do you showcase that your work experience is continuous, even if it is severed by certain systemic shocks like financial recession or COVID pandemic? So, for example, even if you lose your formal work, you're still active and you're still doing something, and to have a tool that records and in a trustworthy way all those contributions can be emancipatory for any individual in this contingent economy. So that's why we are working on our product, Work and Skill, that will be live in the end of the year. Basically, the whole idea is that in addition to all those monetary compensations that you, as somebody who is doing the task, is receiving, you also receive NFT tokens as part of your digital identity that have all the schematics of, for example, all the EU agendas for skills and competencies, and these competencies can then be stacked, can then point towards viable future career pathways, but basically they represent a continuous portable career scheme that can be used from workers to showcase their skills and also to maybe shield their livelihood from all these critical shocks that our economy is facing more and more. So here is basically the whole process that takes place on our platform, but I will briefly skip it. But basically, we connect clients with freelancers, and in exchange for any monetary compensations, freelancers get not only reviews and other, let's say, stars or something, they also receive ESCO compliant competencies that they can be used for any future projects and so forth. So basically, this is the ecosystem that we are trying to connect. We are trying to connect educational systems and institutions to better provide college programs to be aligned with economic needs. We empower freelancers by making basically CVs obsolete, because now you don't need to make stuff up and send CVs to your future employer. You can just showcase them their profile, and the third interested party will know that what they see is what they get, since the whole profile is immutably written on the blockchain. And of course, the clients can forget about all the administrative overhead of hiring process and doing the background checks, because we kind of make these industries obsolete. So yeah, just to wrap up at 8 minutes, the future of work as we see it is continuous career, even without the need for formal work, trustworthy competencies written on the blockchain, quantifiable contributions in the form of voluntary work, and of course empowering the workforce to have leverage in order to better negotiate their work conditions, thus making the whole workforce of the future more autonomous. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, a beautiful example of how technology can help in solving real life problems.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it to 5 minutes and 59 seconds. Clock me on that. So fasten your seatbelts all, because it's going to go pretty fast. So I'm going to talk about the global knowledge metaverse as a means to help people, citizens, to learn, train, and perform, and how to facilitate a resilient post-pandemic recovery. So we work with virtual augmented reality and AI for the purpose of doing a number of things in this, what we call knowledge metaverse. So just to paint the picture, if I assume you see my screen, the idea with the knowledge metaverse as we see it, it has to be open and inclusive to everyone. So we developed this platform that in essence 5.4 billion people can access through their mobile devices to whatever they have, but also that is inclusive in regards to now allowing people that don't know technology, that don't know virtual augmented reality, they may know PowerPoint as the most advanced technology tool they ever had, to be able to create applications. We've also been able to create the world's largest library for knowledge metaverse in XR, I should say. And this is growing thanks to our partners in 42 million partners every day, and it encompasses many fields. That's the first pillar of what we see the future being. The other one is we see a future where this metaverse is expanded. It's expanding our physical world, not retreated from it. We don't believe in the vision, Spielberg's vision of Ready Player One, when society disintegrates because of these activities. But we believe in a world where you create digital assets and digital twins for the purpose of enriching and illuminating your physical space in ways that injects knowledge and allows you to better learn, better train, better perform in the future skills that you require. And last and not least, we believe in connectivity. And with this, I mean, technology should connect people, not divide them. Social media has devastating consequences. You see how AI algorithms can be used in a bad way. That's the bad force. We want to counter that with a strong community creation where people use spatial meetings in order to teleport themselves to a real place in real time, interact for the purpose of learning, training, or performing their tasks. So that's kind of our vision. Now, practically, this you can use, of course, for many things. You can use this for IT technology. In Sevilla, they use it to program robots. You can use it in hospital environments to guide critically ill patients through less anxiety. You can use this in art, culture, workforce development, and many other things. Laboratories right now, due to COVID, it's very difficult to access physical spaces. And so those are aspects that you can use in many ways. Also, the fashion industry, the ability to personalize your avatar. So it's you, it's not someone else. Or cultural heritage. I was just speaking with people about archaeology studies or visiting Louvre, or a number of things you can do. So here's the good news. 73 countries have so far joined this program. It's a grant program where we, together with nonprofit organizations and other, can donate up to $150 million per location per country. So starting as little as $15 million up to the 150 million. And I hope audience here that joins in this are welcome to apply from your locations, whether you're academic institution or government. This COVID has increased this need. We've seen a 819% increase, and it's been global, whether it's in Africa, where it started in February with Morocco, with the ministers there, it was only a $30 million program that now from 6,000 people has gone to 60,000 people, or in China, or in India, or even in Ethiopia. Now we've signed this month with the Minister of Education there to roll out these solutions, or Ecuador, or Panama, etc. So this month I am in Europe. I was Monday in Bulgaria with a center that we inaugurated there, thanks to the Minister of Education, and met with Minister of Finance also to conduct the national rollouts. Slovenia, and this is the reason I'm in this call, because they introduced me to you guys. I met the Minister of Digital Transformation there, Kosovo, Minister of Industry there. Czech Republic was yesterday, actually. And now I'm in Germany and onwards to the Nordic countries. So what is it we want to achieve with this? What's our goal? It's four things. We believe knowledge is a human right, and we want to make it available, accessible, and affordable for everybody on the planet. We believe that the knowledge metaverse belongs to everybody, not to just a few. And it should be built by billions of people, should be owned by billions of people. That's kind of the vision. And the partner benefit that we achieve with this are simple. We know we can transfer not only education, but the way you, as I said, conduct your work, enhance the quality, allow you to build your own IP and digital assets using, for example, protection for plagiarism with non-fungible tokens and blockchain technology, monetizing them so you can do it anytime, anywhere. And so that's kind of in short what we do. Now, we also provide a comprehensive solution consisting of infrastructure, platforms, hardware, know-how, anything in short that you need in order to make this a reality. So we implement this with various programs. So we have a program for future skills. This is for the future jobs, a $50 million grant that you can apply for if you're an academic institution, a research grant program for $50 million, which we are now planting here in Germany, and larger programs with governments that can go all the way to $150 million. So we also have a Metaverse Academy that allows European citizens to be part of this explosive industry. There's 2.6 million jobs created in this industry alone this year. And these are well-paying jobs. So now the last part, and I'll end there, is that we see, we work also with EU grants, with Horizon programs, etc. I'm not going to go into that. But what I think interesting with this, there used to be a song by, I think, called Every Step You Take, Every Move You Make, I'll Be Watching You. I think it was Sting that had that song. And what's unique about virtual augmented reality, that we can actually track what you're doing when you are conducting those. So the skills we were talking, my colleagues talked about earlier, we can actually match make them. So you can see your user profile. Are you creative? Are you driven? So we actually know what you're doing because we have 2 million data points every second that you can choose to share in order to better advance your ability to take that future job. So with that, I'll stop and thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Dan.
Very much appreciated. I propose that we move on immediately, and Joyce and I will, and Joyce, first of all, thank you very much for your flexibility. We'll take the last 10 minutes to discuss a little bit what the current situation is and where we have in the market some skill gaps. Okay, now we have in Europe here a consortium that is called CHASE. Joyce, could you maybe first of all very briefly, 30 to 60 seconds, explain what CHASE is?
Yes, delighted to. I think this project is a blockchain skills in Europe, started this year, 2021 to 2024. And it's very timely in the sense that the results will be out, I think, in the next week or so. And what it does, it documents the skills demand, the skills supply, the mismatch, but also provides, if you like, a roadmap for industry growth, workplace planning, and societal choices for the future. It involves 13 countries. I won't list them all off, and 23 partners. So in fact, what it's doing in a kind of very concrete way is developing a strategic approach to the development of blockchain skills in Europe. And I think this will provide the basis for future planning, all strategic planning of what everybody's been talking about.
What is CHASE discussing? What kind of conclusions are coming forward? So you are putting forward the current dynamics in the market, then the potential mismatch, and then going forward, it seems to me that you mentioned kind of vision, what will be needed somewhere in the future. Could you map a little bit current situation?
Yeah, no,
where we want to go?
As I say, these are very much preliminary findings. The full report will literally, I had hoped that it would be out this week, but it should be out this week or in fact next week. So all those reports will give the detail. But really, I suppose for what we've heard before, there are difficulties. Half of the firms interviewed couldn't recruit people. And that's really important. I think there's lots of jobs in the area. There's shortage of blockchain architects and developers with appropriate skills. And what's interesting is that the skills that people are learning in education and in training bodies, there's a mismatch in that what is needed is an understanding of business, an understanding of communication. What I thought was really interesting was that in order to develop and get people to adapt and adopt blockchain in their business, or even to think about it in education, that all of us who are involved in blockchain need to communicate very clearly what it is. I think it was Philip who said he, didn't quite understand it, but the problem is the general public don't understand it. And I think we've a real task here of talking about the applications. I like today the panel showed how it can be used. In Block W, that's what we do. We give examples of how it can be applied. So communication is important, leadership is important, teamwork and creativity. Now, they're not new, Wim. Everybody says this is what is important. So there are technical skills. The other issue, I think, is I think it was Philip talked about micro-credentials. What industry is saying, look, we can't wait for all these people to be doing masters or doctorates or whatever. We want them to come into our industry, work with us, and at the same time receive training. So I think the European initiative on micro-credentials is really critical, and how all these ways and apps of verifying and building these micro-credentials, and blockchain, of course, can help do that. So I hope that gives you a feel, a lot going on, lots of jobs, but that mismatch taking place.
Do you think that so the mismatch that the market shows for the moment, which apparently is more concentrated on the technical profiles, do you
yes,
think
with that business input as well? But I think what it shows, the one thing this study will do, it'll do forecasting, for the next 4 years. So again, everybody will see what's needed, and gradually more the business side, the project management side, all the other aspects, PR communications are coming into place. Okay.
Now, let's discuss a little bit the future that is a little bit further out. Has there been discussions within Chase on a medium long-term vision and what would be needed going forward?
I think they're still working on that, but that's what they will produce. It's a strategic map for Europe, what's necessary, what are the policy implications. And I suppose this rises that this isn't just an academic piece of research. It's being fed into governments and policymakers, but it does underlie, Wim, I think, the importance of governments investing, looking to the future, and creating an environment that blockchain can kind of develop and thrive. And that's really important. So future planning around skills, investment in that is really important. But the other thing I think is important, going back to that communications side, is that in Ireland now we've just recently introduced an AI strategy, and we have as an implementation phase the introduction of an ambassador for AI. I'd like to see an ambassador for blockchain around Europe, and their job is actually to tell people about the excitement, the possibilities, and proposing started in primary school. I think all moms and dads should get that, right the way through civil society, because that's where it starts. as well as industry. We'll always think about industry and academics and so on. So I thought that was quite an innovative thing, this ambassador. But I think also then they're developing an enterprise digital advisory group where they bring all the stakeholders together, government, business, academia, and society. And more importantly, and probably as important, is creating a board of all the leaders in the public service so that they know about it. So we've talked briefly about this, but I think that a kind of quadruple helix around blockchain AI, where you're talking about industry, academia, government, and society. Society cannot be left out. And I think there was discussion earlier with the panelists about the importance of values, ethics, you know, the nature of work, the nature of labor. That will now, for the first time, I think, in technology, bring society values into it. So that's really, I think, another exciting aspect of what is happening.
It's a pity that we only have so much time, because this, first of all, it's close to my heart, and we could go on a long time. Now, so on your last point, the necessity to insert also society in that educational process. I think that this is a technology, blockchain specifically then, that needs a change of mindset from this centralized towards more decentralized systems. So yeah,
exactly. You know, that really emphasizes that it's a change in society, how we act, how we look at work, but gives us control over our own, you know, whether it's our money, whether it's our work, whatever it is, it does give us that control. So there are quite a lot of philosophical issues. It's not just purely technology, pressing a button and get something. It has to involve people. And if not, our desire in Europe and in Ireland and other countries to be really key developers and key you know, experts and hubs in this area won't happen, because people won't adapt it or adopt it.
Completely agree. And I would foster an approach where all educational efforts in the space have a hands-on approach, learning by doing. This is so novel, and in technology, in also mindset, that people have to experiment and come to their own conclusions.
Well, we've an interesting thing, just briefly, in the University of Limerick and Stripe, you know, the company, it's a paid company. They've actually now created a course in engineering where it is learning by doing, working with key industries and so on. So, and I think actually your own INATBA report on blockchain and for socioeconomic issues provides a really good platform and framework for the development of that kind of work.
Yes, and we continue working all in that direction. I inserted for the audience, those who are interested, a document that Professor O'Connor Choice provided with the publications that Chase made until now. So you can find that in the chat. There is a list with the publications and then also the link. I'm very sorry to say that our time has been used. Joyce, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I would like to continue the discussion.
I'm
sure we'll have the opportunity somewhere in the future. So looking forward to that. And then
thank you very much.
I would like to thank also all the other panelists, Ulrich, Alan, Philip, Dan. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. I'm handing over to the organizers. Thank you. Bye-bye.